Hi everyone, and in today's Q&A session, I am going to be covering how to draw a trend line properly or correctly and how to adjust it as the market moves and as you go along. So basically, a trend line is used to kind of navigate the market direction. So it allows you to determine whether the market is going up or whether the market is going down, whether it's bullish or bearish. But it can also be used to determine the speed the market is moving in. So for example, if my trend line is moving like this, then I could see that this market is basically coming and bouncing at these levels here, and it shows me the speed of this market. But if my trend line is looking something like this, it means that the market has probably accelerated. We probably had a big push, a news announcement, something like that. And because of that, the market responded to that announcement or news and has started accelerating or moving faster. And what that means is this: if the market is covering a distance, right? If this is our distance here, start at the low to finish, and the market is moving, if you all watch a trend line like this and a trend line like this, it means that the market is going to take a longer time to get all the way up to the top. But if for some reason your trend line is like this, it's probably because, as I said, we had a spike and the market is going to reach up to this area here in a faster time. And that is how the trend lines allow you to measure the speed. When the trend line when the trend is very slow, you tend to get sideways movement, which if you are using a trend line might look something like this, but we don't tend to use a trend line under those environments, but it's still valid. All right, we might quicker go to a consolidation chart where we're more watching the market like this rather than drawing an actual trend line. All right, so the trend line is going to be used to measure the market direction or help you determine market direction, and also to measure the speed in which the market is moving in that direction. A trend line can also be used to determine entries and exits based on your positions that you take, and we're going to go over that now in detail. All right, so when we start, let me just clear the screen. First thing I do when I'm looking at a chart is I want to identify the highest and the lowest points. And the reason why I want to do that, based on the information that we have in front of us, these lows here would be the lows, and this high here would be the highest high point so far. If the market is in an uptrend, which we could see here, from this information, we could see that the market is making higher highs and higher lows, pushing up. The simplest or the easiest way to do this is to start from these lows, swing out, and what you want to do is swing up until you touch the first point in the market. All right. Now, when you touch that first point, you need to ask yourself a question. Is the point that I'm touching, so let me just highlight it. Is this point that I'm touching here, is this point between this low and this high, or is it after the high? And now this is where it might get tricky. When you're swinging up and you touch a point here, this point is beyond this high. You see, if we draw a vertical line at the high and a vertical line at the low, this point is beyond that high point, which means that we have to continue swinging that trend line until it touches a point, the next point that it touches within these two areas here. And that is how we will know that our trend line is done correctly. This area here is the first point that it touched within these two areas. And that is when the trend line is drawn correctly. And the reason why we do it like this is because, remember, as I said, a trend line could also provide you with entries. When the market breaks a trend or breaks a trend line, and we get the market pulling back to that area, we can use that area as an area to enter. So rather than us thinking, if the way we had the trend line first, right? The way we had this trend line here first, we might have been saying, you know what, this market is going to continue going bullish. But based on the information now we have in front of us now, the market actually broke the trend line, came back to this area, and now has rejected at this area. We're seeing a U-turn here. So now we should actually expect this market to continue to push bearish. All right, until this market breaks this high here, this would be our trend line. Now, if the market goes on to move, now remember, this is how you would draw it with the information that we have in front of us. If for some reason the market continues to push up, it means that we have an adjustment in terms of the highest point on the chart. When that happens, then you can adjust your trend line. So let's say, for example, from here, the market continues to push and it does this. From here, let's say it goes up here and forms a high higher than this previous high. Then it means when we're resetting now, that area here would become the highest point. We'd move this vertical line, and the first point that we identified here becomes the low within this range that we touch first. So then this becomes the correct trend line. And that is how you have to adjust the trend lines. And the reason why, if I'll go back and do this area here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. When we're talking about this area here, so let's forget everything that happened beyond here. So let's say this is the highest point, this area right here that I've identified. Let me do this. Highest point. At this current point, my trend line, right, is going to be, when I swing, as you could see, up, if it was up to this point, my trend line is going to be right here. See, it would have touched here first if we're looking within these two lines there, between the two vertical lines, the two black lines here. All right, we would see that the market has formed, is touched, the trend line has touched here, and this has been the uptrend, higher highs and higher lows. When we identify this, look at what happens here. The market comes to this trend line, bounces, and then pushes up, making a higher high from here. So the reason why we identify this is because we're looking for areas to buy and sell this market. So once the market comes to this trend line here, this becomes an area to buy. Every time that the market touches the trend line, we can look for buy entries and the market will continue to go up. When the market, however, right, broke the trend line the first time, broke here, came back and retest, we did have a rejection. Now, the rejection was not strong enough to reverse the trend, but understand what we are doing. When the market comes here, all right, this is our trend line, a break, a good sell entry. We do have enough for a rejection down to these lows. So based on where your targets are, you would have still been able to make some profit here with this move. All right, now that the market, however, after this move, and we started pushing higher again, we have to now adjust the trend line. Because why? The market continued to make higher points, which we would have then adjusted. And as we go higher again, we have to now swing the trend line until it touches. And that's all you do. If it touches here first, is this within? No. Keep going. Yes, this is within these two vertical lines. Good. If it's not and the market continues to push, so as of right now, this is still the highest point. This stays right here. Now, this is something that would be easier with practice and how it will look without the lines. I like to do it without the lines. If this is my two current points, without the chart, sorry, let me just start with some lines. If this is the information that we have here, lowest point, highest point. All right. And just to recap, my trend line, and I'm just going to change the color, my trend line is going to start at the lowest point in an uptrend and swing up until the point that it touches first. It touched here, and this is within the black and the two black lines. So then this is correct for my trend line. What would I be looking for? My scenarios would then become, I'd look, if the trend is going to continue, I would want the market to come here, bounce, right? If it comes to this area, this is where I want to buy once I see some rejection, and I should see the trend continuing. If, however, it breaks the trend line, right? So if you're in this scenario and instead of buying, let's say it comes down here like this, breaks this trend line, I'll be looking for the market to come back and retest the trend line and look for a sell-off. That's what I'll be looking for with the trend line. As the market continues to move, we will then adjust the trend line. So if from here, this market, let's say from here, starts going up again, and it eventually makes a higher high than this high, then when I look at my chart, lowest point, highest point, when I start at the lowest point, I need to swing my line up, and this would become the new trend line, guys. And that is how it works. And then from that point, you would have this outer trend line. You could also have inner trend line. So simple, the exact same way. You're going to start at the point that it touched first, and you're going to swing up. You're going to swing up until it touches a point. Again, the point cannot be beyond the high point. And that will be your inner trend line and your outer trend line. And that's how it works. Alright guys, so I hope this helped with trend lines. Any questions that you all have about any content that you see here, feel free to message me and I would be able to clear it up for you. You could comment on the video, let me know, and I will try and clear it up for you. But this is how you draw and adjust trend lines, and this is something that you will get better at with practice, guys. Alright, so have a great evening. I'll see you all next week.